Welcome to the Real Marriage Talk podcast with Christopher and Christy Monroe.
On this podcast, we talk about real life, we share our real marriage, and we have real talk.
So make sure to subscribe to this channel and to turn on notifications so that you know when the latest episode drops.
And share this video with your friends, your family, and your spouse. This is Real Marriage Talk. Hi, welcome to the Real Marriage Talk podcast, episode 5. We're Christopher and Christy Monroe, and we've been married for almost 17 years. Actually, to be exact, we'll be married for 17 years in 16 days.
From the time of this recording.
From the time of this recording, yes. 16 more days, we'll be married for 17 years.
Yep.
It's been a good 17 years. We've had our good moments, we've had our bad moments, and the whole point of this podcast is we want to share our marriage journey with you in hopes to help you with your marriage journey as well.
Yep.
And so on our first episode, actually our second episode, we began to build a foundation of what marriage is. What is love? What is that agape kind of love? How do you truly love your spouse? And we began to build that foundation. And so we're going to continue building that foundation a little bit more with an important, vital topic that I think that is for all married couples. When you marry the person that you want to spend the rest of your life with, one of the most important things to realize is we go from a me to a we.
Yep. Yeah, and so we want to talk to you today about the idea of becoming one.
Mm-hmm.
And so we look at this. Obviously, if you've been following along with us, you know that we look to the Bible for our answers.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say that this is probably my biggest piece of advice that I could give a married couple, starting out or who have been married for several years, is to understand this concept of being one.
Mm-hmm.
In Genesis chapter 2, when God first ordained and established marriage, he says this in Genesis chapter 2, verse 23, then Adam said, "This one at last is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh. This one will be called woman, for she was taken out of man." Verse 24 says, "This is why a man leaves his father and his mother and unites with his wife, and they became a new family." Other translations or in other passages like Mark chapter 10, verse 8 says that, "And the two shall become one flesh."
Mm-hmm.
So they are no longer two, but one flesh. And I love that concept of becoming one because I think it's important. And when, like Christy said, that when we get married, we go from a me to a we. And I see this struggle so much in relationships. One more Bible verse for you, and then we'll move on. In Matthew chapter 19, verse 5, and it says that for this reason a man will leave his father and mother and will be united to his wife, and the two will become one flesh.
Right.
In Matthew 19, verse 6, it goes on to say that so they are no longer two, but one flesh. Therefore, what God has joined together, let no one separate. And this, I think, is where we spend a lot of time in marriages. A lot of our struggles stem from the lack of understanding of what one means, and that we spend a lot of time doing exactly what verse 6 tells us not to do, and we separate ourselves. For the longest time in my life, I looked at that verse and I always thought it meant like somebody coming into the marriage and driving it apart. But as I've gotten older, I look at that and I can see that how that represents, like, it can mean us. We separate that when we try to go on with our life as individuals completely separated from our spouse. And you see this a lot of times and I see a lot of married couples who do this, and they even down to like having their own bank accounts, which isn't the end of the world.
Right. It's not a rule that we have to follow.
Yeah, and I know I know some couples who have separate bank accounts and have a thriving marriage, but even just getting down to the basic of that's your money, this is my money, is separating what should become one, because when we are one, everything is one.
Right.
And we look at this, when we become a one flesh, it's now no longer what I do on my own, and no longer what you do on your own, but how is it going to affect the family unit.
Right. It's not no longer his, or it's not longer no longer mine, but it's ours.
Yeah. And we see that struggle so much. And when we have this mindset, we spend a lot of times fighting
Fighting.
against ourselves. And because it's just that mentality, and we break it down to, we see couples, and I know these are little things. And we're going to say, but it's the little things. It's the little things that are done over time that add up.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, little things like consistently driving separate places,
Right.
coming to church or going to eat or,
Going to sporting events.
yeah.
Anything. Going to your kids' ball games. Anything that you do separate.
And I know sometimes, like, one's just coming from work and one's coming from home, and
Right.
there are circumstances. But when you leaving from the house and you get in two separate cars and
And you're
you go
going to
your
the
own
same
way
place.
to go to the same place, it's little things. It's little things like having your own bank account that separates. This is my money and this is her money. And we've heard people talk about, I've worked for my money, so I'm going to spend it however I want.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is that when I'm spending my money however I want, it's affecting the whole unit. It's affecting my family. It's affecting my relationships. It's affecting everything that we do because now we are one.
Mm-hmm.
We've heard people going down talking about this is his bills, this is her bills. I pay this, and this, and he pays this, and this, or whatever it may
Right.
be. And we spend a lot of time talking and breaking this stuff up and living separate lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to understand the value of being one in everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say this because this is something that I learned when I was a teenager at church growing up. My pastor was talking to a bunch of us one time, and he was talking, and he said, it's not two halves. It's not like I'm a half a person. It's not like I'm incomplete and I'm looking for someone to come and make me whole.
Mm-hmm.
Like that won't work. If I am incomplete, if I'm not, if I'm empty myself, Christy is not going to be the one that completes me and fills me and makes me whole.
Mm-hmm.
If that was I was a half a person and she was a half a person and we came together, then we would just be two halves.
True.
And so again, we believe that it's Jesus that fills us, Jesus that completes us. And so when I'm my own complete person, and then we come together, it don't work like a normal math equation. It's not 1 + 1 = 2, but it's 1 + 1 = 1. It's like a fusion.
Mm-hmm.
It's my complete individual life and her complete individual life
Right.
now become one flesh.
Mm-hmm.
We are one flesh. We are one. We are in this together. We are
We're on the same team.
yes.
And you see a lot of marriages that they fight against each other, and it's like they cannot realize, hey, we're on the same team. You've said that a lot lately, that people don't realize that they're on the same team. They're fighting against each other, and that causes so much tension in their marriage when they fight against each other. If they would just realize we are on the same team. And you talk about, even when it comes to the kids,
Oh yeah.
one parent might discipline them and the other one might let them off the hook.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of tension because whenever it comes to disciplining your children, you need to become one.
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's hard because you might not see eye to eye on certain things. But if you really want to do it the way it should be done, when a child gets in trouble, both parents, both the husband and the wife, need to come together and be on the same team in that moment.
Yeah.
And it's really hard sometimes.
It is hard sometimes, especially in the spur of the moment, and that's why it's good. Like especially when it comes to the kids and how you're going to discipline. That's a good conversation to have before you are
Before
disciplined.
you get on to them.
Yeah, before you have to discipline your kids, and how are we going to handle this when the kid messes up or acts out? How are we going to do these things? And if we are really honest. I think most of us, I don't think there has been a marriage in the world that probably has not struggled in some way, shape, or form financially. And financial struggles are at the root of a lot of marriage problems. And what happens, and I can say this from experience because early on we struggled financially. And what we was doing was I was trying to figure out how to fix it on my own. She was trying to figure out how to fix it on her own. We weren't communicating. We weren't talking about it. And we had my plan. She had her plan, and she wasn't going along with my plan because she didn't know about it. And I wasn't going along with her plan because I didn't know about it. And we're butting heads and we're fighting. And there's a lot of conflict and nothing's getting resolved. And it becomes not necessarily with us, but it just becomes, how are you going to fix this? What are you going to do about this when conflict does arise? And it's pushing blame, and this is what happens when we are apart. And this is, I really truly do believe it's one way that the enemy attacks us.
Yeah.
That he wants to separate us and cause division, because when one is united, they are strong and they are together. But when we're divided, we are weak. And so this is one thing. One reason why I think that we struggle so much here is because we need to be together. And that's where we find our strength. That's where we find our solutions a lot of times. But we are sometimes too hard headed, too stubborn, too independent, and that goes on both sides of the marriage. There, it can be the husband or the wife. A lot of times we can be too headstrong and set in our ways, however you want to say it, and not wanting to listen or even begin to have the conversations about how are we going to fix this.
Right. There's no communication, it seems, these days in marriages. And that's where we see problems, when there is no communication between the two.
Yeah.
And you see a lot of divorces happen. And it's sad because a lot of divorces end up because there's no communication. And like, I don't understand what is wrong with him, or I don't understand what's wrong with her, when they don't know because they don't communicate.
Yeah.
They don't realize, hey, we're one. We need to talk this out. We need to decide these things together when it comes to finances, because like you said, the blame game happens. And then that's where you see a lot of relationships fall apart, is because there is no communication in those moments.
Yeah.
And so it's a hard thing sometimes. We've learned a lot of hard things. And, to go even further than finances, it's not all about finances when it comes to marriage, obviously. But, like, I read this article yesterday about a wife who her husband had struggled with an addiction. And, she was heartbroken over this addiction, obviously. And at one point in the article, it says it's not his struggle. It's not her struggle with her struggles. It's not hers or his. It's their struggle. And I think that a lot of times in our marriage, when one of us do struggle, we say that to ourselves, my struggle or his struggle. And when you become one, whatever each other's struggles is becomes your struggles together. And I think a lot of times we miss that.
Yeah.
We do.
I really do.
It's not his struggle. It's not my struggle. It's our struggle.
We have a hard time understanding to come together as one. And there's a lot that will go into this, and a lot that pushes into this, and the society that we live in, pushing independence, which independence isn't a bad thing. And we should be able to, like I said, it's not like I'm a broken person looking for someone to come and make me whole. I am my own individual person that is complete and strong in myself. And I'm not looking to Christy to fulfill me and to make me complete. But when I can come together with her, it just makes me that much stronger. And as we are fighting, a lot of times when we are living as two, and it's funny because so many times that we can live in the same house, and sleep in the same bed or whatever, and still be living like separate lives apart from each other. And sometimes it's like we only pass each other, like just in the passing, and just have those moments. And
it's almost like you're roommates instead of soulmates.
Right, yeah.
And that's a sad place to be.
And we can have that. And so my biggest advice to anybody that I see is, because we live in this. We live separated. Maybe not, I know that's a legal term now. We're legally separate. We'll not be legally separated. We may not be filing for divorce, but we live our lives separate from each other. And then when conflict arises, we are fighting one another instead of when we realize that we are one, we stop fighting against each other and we start fighting with each other or for one another and
Mm-hmm.
trying to figure out how we can overcome the situation that we are in.
Right, and when you have your wedding and you stand on that stage or wherever you're standing, and the preacher says, "Repeat after me." Do you take this man or woman to be your wedded wife, husband, and you say, "I do," and those are magic words, in my opinion. When you say "I do," you don't realize what you're saying "I do" to until you're actually married for 10, 15 years, and you're
Hmm.
like, wow, why did I say "I do"? A lot of times. And when you say those words in your wedding or wherever you got married, when you say "I do," you're saying we become one.
Yeah.
And and I say "I do." I accept the choice to become a we,
No, we.
a we,
Hmm.
or us. I accept that we are now not a me, not a you, but an us.
Yeah.
And that's the magic. That's the key, is accepting that when you do marry this person that you love and you want to spend the rest of your life with, that you become a we and forget about the me, me, me.
Yeah. And that just makes it changed the whole dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
And we say this because, like, we said for the first, a little bit that we would fight against each other, trying to, yeah, we struggled financially. Well, whose fault was that? And why did this happen? And what are you going to do about this? How are you going to fix that? And then somewhere down the line, there's not a magic day that it just light bulb came on, but just over time, we begin to grasp a hold of this idea that we are not fighting. We're not supposed to fight against each other, but we are on the same team, and we are fighting for the same cause. We are fighting for the same goal. We are fighting to remain to keep this family afloat and moving forward. And when that begin to happen, things in our relationship begin to change. And so we can spend a lot of time and a lot of energy fighting our spouse for who's right, who's wrong, uh, or whatever, or because nothing will get done, or we can spend a lot of time beginning to fight uh, with our spouse together, fighting the problem that we are facing, and see solutions come. And how can we solve this? How can we handle this?
It's all a choice. It's
Yeah.
just like everything we've talked about. Love is a choice. Everything in life is a choice. And we can either choose to be ourselves only, or we can choose to be one with our spouse. And some people just have not decided to make that choice.
Yeah.
And one day maybe they will. And I would love to see how the relationship grows once they do realize, hey, I'm making the decision to be one with my spouse and not a separate. Then
Yeah.
so, yeah, it's a great topic, and I think that a lot of marriages can use this and run with it, because it is something that a lot of people don't realize that is so important in our marriages, is that we are one.
We are one. We are one in everything,
We are one in everything.
in our finances,
Mhm.
in our struggles,
In our struggles.
in our bad decisions,
Hmm.
in everything that we do. We are one. And when we operate in that consistently,
Hmm.
things will change in our marriage.
Yep.
The tensions will die down.
We are living proof of that.
The fights will slow down,
Hmm.
if not stop altogether. Why? Because you're not fighting each other.
Hmm.
You're fighting for each other. You're fighting the outside world for the relationship, and that's what it should be.
Hmm.
Fighting with your spouse for your spouse, for your marriage, and for your relationship, and for your family, and not allowing anything to separate what God has put it together, whether it's an outside person or if it's an inside struggle.
True.
Not letting anything come in and separate what God has put together, because we are no longer two, but we are one flesh.
Hmm. That's great.
Yeah.
I love it. And we hope that y'all love it too. And we hope that this has been encouraging to you. And we hope that you can apply it to your marriage.
Yes.
And so that's about all we have for this episode.
Yeah. So continue to connect with us. Connect with us on YouTube. You
YouTube.
watch this. You can listen to it on any of your favorite podcast platforms.
Mhm.
You can also connect with us, really connect with us on Facebook. at
Yes.
facebook.com/Real Marriage Talk. You can join the page and you can get daily inspirational quotes and marriage tips and more. And then if you have questions
Mm-hmm.
or comments, you want to, if there's topics that you want us to cover, or if there is
Any suggestions you have for us?
yeah, any marriage tips that you have that's really kind of saved your marriage,
Mm-hmm.
you can send them into questions at realmarriagetalk.com.
Mm-hmm.
Say that again. Questions at
realmarriagetalk.com.
realmarriagetalk.com.
Yeah. And do it. We want your all's feedback because sometimes we sit and we're like, well, what are we going to talk about this week? And we want y'all's questions and your tips and your suggestions. And so send them to us and let us know. Connect with us through these platforms that he just mentioned. And so we look forward to the next episode. We will see you guys next
Partner?
week.
Yeah.
And until then, we hope y'all have a great week.
Yeah. And be one.
Be one. Yeah.
I'll see
Bye,
y'all later.
everybody.